देवाय ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय ॐ अज्ञानतिमिरन्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरुवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूपकदा मायं ददाति स्वापदान्तिकम्। वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरु श्रीयुतपदकमलं श्रीगुरून् वैष्णवंश्च श्रीरूपं साग्रजातं सगुणरघुनाथं वितं तं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनसहितं कृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्रीराधाकृष्णपादान् सहगुणललिता श्रीविशाखान्वितंश्च हे कृष्ण करुणा सिंधु दीनबंधु जगतपते गोपेश गोपिका कांत राधकांत नमस्तुते तप्त कांचन गौरंगे राधे वृंदवनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिय वाञ्छकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्यैव च पतितनां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। नमः ओं विष्णुपदाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमति भक्तिवेदांत स्वामिति नामिने नमस्ते सरस्वती देवे गौरवाणे प्रचारणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य तारणे। Hare Krishna again. Thank you so much for joining. So this is our last class on module 1, and I was reflecting that how time moves so quickly. I just remember starting the Bhakti Shastri, and now we are ending module 1. I don't know about you all, but been a lot of fun for me so far. So we will start with our group exercise for chapter 6.
Pradyumna group.
Hare Krishna everyone. So today we, part of Pradyumna group, will be presenting a short play on our understanding on topic mind, my best friend or my worst enemy. Hopefully we will be able to do justice with this important topic. So about this short play, there are 3 characters. One is narrator, second is participant 1 who is an aspiring devotee, and third character is mind. So with your permission and blessings, we are starting our act now. Hare Krishna. Have you ever sat down to chant and within a few minutes, your mind is somewhere else? If yes, you are not alone. Today we will see what Krishna teaches us about the mind. Is it our best friend or our worst enemy?
Today I will chant with full attention. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Oh, again my mind is wandering. Where do I chant? Where did my chanting go? And again mind is wandering.
I'm doing what I've always been trained to do, wander. Whatever you repeatedly think about, that is where I naturally go.
Mind, why do you trouble me? Are you my enemy?
Krishna answers this in Bhagavad Gita 6.5. One must deliver himself with the help of his mind and not degrade himself. The mind is the friend of the conditioned soul and his enemy as well. The mind itself is not the problem.
I'm not your enemy. I'm not automatically your friend either. I am powerful. I simply follow what you practice every day. Train me towards temporary things and I will go there. Train me towards Krishna and I will go towards him.
Can you show me how you become my enemy?
Certainly, when you sit to chant, I remind you of everything except Krishna. Think about your work, remember tomorrow's plans, what will you eat later? One thought becomes another, and before you know it, you have forgotten Krishna.
So you pull me away from Krishna.
Only because I'm not trained. I don't choose the direction, I simply go where I've been trained to go.
That is why Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita 6.6, for one who has conquered the mind is the best friend. But for one who has failed to do so, the mind remains the greatest enemy. When the mind is uncontrolled, it pulls us away from our spiritual goal. When it is controlled, it helps us reach that goal.
Then how do I train my mind?
Krishna gives this answer in Bhagavad Gita 6.26. From wherever the mind wanders due to its flickering and unsteady nature, one must certainly withdraw it and bring it back under the control of the self. Notice, Krishna doesn't say, become frustrated. He simply says, bring it back again and again and again.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
I wandered again, bring me back.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare.
Bring me back.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare.
Now, calm and peaceful. Every time you bring me back to Krishna, you're training me. Slowly, I become peaceful. Slowly, I help you remember Krishna.
But sometimes it is very difficult.
Even Arjuna felt the same. In Bhagavad Gita 6.33 and 3.4, he tells Krishna, the mind is restless, turbulent, obstinate, and very strong. To control it appears more difficult than controlling the wind. If Arjuna experienced this struggle, we should not become discouraged.
So I don't need to give up. I simply need to continue practicing.
Exactly. Don't fight me. Train me. Bring me back to Krishna again and again. Then I will help you remember him.
That is Krishna's message. The mind is powerful. If left uncontrolled, it pulls us away from Krishna. If patiently trained in Krishna consciousness, it becomes our best friend.
Okay, so the mind is powerful.
Train me towards Krishna and I will help you remember him.
Let us patiently bring the mind back to Krishna again and again until our greatest challenge becomes our greatest friend.
So I learned a controlled mind is our best friend. An uncontrolled mind is our greatest enemy. Let us train our mind by remembering Krishna every day. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Yeah, we are done, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Prabhu. This is a good synthesis of Astanga Yoga and Bhakti Yoga, of how to control the mind and bring it to Krishna. I also really liked your role play, especially the lines that you gave mind to speak. They were humorous, but I think all of us could relate to it. We all have this face this situation of the mind having a mind of its own. So thank you. Hare Krishna. Okay, and we can now have any question answers on the 6th chapter or any chapter prior to that. Yes, Amit Prabhu, please go ahead.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Dandat Pranam. So as like there in the presentation, and I have a question related to that presentation, and because in the verses from 6.33 to 36, it mentioned about like the controlling the mind. So which is more important for controlling the mind? Is it the practice or the detachment?
Yeah, good question. Would anyone in the group like to respond to it?
I think practice, Prabhu, because detachment will only come when we train the mind to attach to Krishna. If we don't train our mind, we are not going to learn how to attach ourselves to Krishna, because the mind is so powerful, or it is so what do you call it? It has its own mind, like our Prabhuji said.
Yeah,
Right.
just to add that, Prabhuji, practice and then cultivating the knowledge would lead to detachment. I don't, at least one cannot jump to detachment unless one has practiced and gained knowledge.
Sure. Thank you, Prabhuji. Thank you, Mataji.
Thank you, Prabhu. And
Bye, Hari Prabhuji.
if I might add a little bit to it, if you follow the path of bhakti, then abhyas is what gives vairagya. The vairagya appears as a byproduct. If you follow the path of astanga, then vairagya is a prerequisite. That's what makes vairagya more. That's what makes astanga more difficult. So as you know, when we were discussing, we said that from sakam to nishkam, right? So nishkam is already in the process of cultivating detachment. And then we also, as part of astang, at least when we go to the stage of pratyahar, then we are completely detached. And that's what makes the process more difficult. That's why Arjun, even though Krishna says abhyasena te kaunteya vairagya suchyate, right? And Arjun says that immediately after him, what he asks is that what about those who have failed, right? Which means that he's still not fully convinced about the potency of Astanga Yoga in developing detachment, right? And this is where Krishna in the next chapter will now segue into Bhakti.
Sure. Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Okay. Anything else? Okay, if not, yeah, please go ahead, Nanda Tanuja Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, Dandavat Pranam. Thank you. Quick question. Is there a difference? Oh, sorry. First of all, is there something called a spiritual mind and distinct from the material mind? And what's that interconnection?
Good question, Prabhu. If I might redefine a question a little bit, there's a difference between spiritual intelligence and material intelligence. Mind is essentially a product of the material world, and so is material intelligence. So it essentially is something that we get when we come down into this world. Intelligence is what sits on top of the mind, and within the material world, it is material intelligence. However, there is a counterpart, which is spiritual intelligence. The distinction, which we'll study in the 14th chapter, is the influence of the modes. The three modes, they contaminate the pure intelligence of the jiva, and it gives it the materialistic hue. We studied a little bit, if you remember, in the 5th chapter when I was talking about why does Nishkam work. Then we talked about the journey of the jiva from a purified state to a conditioned state, right? And then essentially calm or lust is what acts on it and gets it to that. So that would be the distinction between material intelligence and spiritual intelligence.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you, Prabhu. Yes, Mataji, how do you pronounce your name? Shama Lavarni?
Yes, Prabhuji.
Please go.
I've been having this question for a long time. I was not sure if I should ask or not, but I thought, okay, I have to ask. Module 1 is almost over. So Prabhuji, I was reading about the Swadharma and Paradharma, and I have this question. We say Paradharma is dharma of the, like, whenever I've heard people say Paradharma is the soul, eternal dharma of the soul. But I also read Paradharma is other people's dharma, like Swadharma is your own dharma and Paradharma is other people's dharma. I was kind of confused about those two. Is Paradharma the eternal dharma of the soul, which is to be of service to Krishna, like loving service, devotional service to Krishna? Or is it like, okay, if I am a Kshatriya, my duty is to fight, but if I'm a Shudra, so it's not my duty to fight when I'm a Brahmana, or
Mhm.
I was kind of confused about that, Prabhuji.
Where did you hear this, that Paradharma is the dharma of other people?
I think I read it in the Bhagavad Gita book only, probably. I don't remember the purport
Okay.
now, but
You're I don't remember reading it, but I can see why that can be used, because in at least the way that Srila Prabhupada and the Goswamis use it, Paradharma is, as you mentioned, the eternal dharma of the soul. Para also means going beyond, and that's where it comes in. That Swadharma is me as a Kshatriya or a Vaishya, and me as a different aspects of the Varnashram. So that is the Swadharma of the conditioned soul, and going beyond that, you get the dharma of the soul. My recommendation would be to look at the context. If you see Paradharma used in pointing to the dharma of others, you probably need to look at the context. Having said that, it's not surprising, because terms in Sanskrit, they can mean many things depending on the context. As I was saying, the word Atma in the Panini's dictionary, it has 11 meanings. Dharma has several meanings there, right? And because of these multiple meanings ascribed to the same word, the same shloka can actually mean different things. And actually, interestingly, that is one of the points that we will discuss in 7.1 today, how different related, how different constructs can be used to derive different meanings. In terms of wordplay, there is a humorous pastime of Krishna going to meet Srimati Radharani, and it's one of the Goswamis, I forget the details, but it's very humorous. Radharani refuses to meet Krishna, and she says, "Who are you?" And then he says, "I'm Hari." And one of the meanings of Hari is monkey. So she says, "I have no time for monkeys." And then he says, no, I am Gopa. And then she derives another meaning of Gopa, meaning like a vessel, and she says, "I have no milk over here." So it's a very long, relatively long conversation that is completely based on how one word can mean more than one thing. And Srimati Radharani, just to tease Krishna, is taking and Lalita is participating in that. She's taking the different meaning. So that's one of the beauty of Sanskrit language, that is very poetic. The person speaking can speak many things with same words.
Thank you. Dandavat pranam.
Okay, so I see that there are no more questions. So we will start with a discussion on the 7th chapter, and I will get ready for that. So as we had discussed earlier on, that the first section of the Bhagavad Gita, it focused on karma, right? And the 6 chapters, they talked about karma or items that were closely related to karma. The second section talks about bhakti. And acharyas, with different level of metaphors, they glorify how just like a king comes with soldiers before and after him, bhakti is protected by karma and gyan. Or sometimes it's said that like a pearl is protected between the hard shells of an oyster. The pearl of bhakti, Krishna protects between the hard shell of karma and gyan. Also, how bhakti being in the middle is touching karma and gyan on either sides. So they're both taking sustenance from bhakti. And so like if you have a table in the middle and you have two bookends at the side, it's the table that is giving them that support. So that's why bhakti in the middle is supporting karma and gyan. So this section also for devotees is relatively easy, because if you have noticed, and I think this was one of the questions in the last section also, that in the first 6 chapters, Krishna speaks about karma. Srila Prabhupada speaks about bhakti. In the last 6 chapters, Krishna speaks about Gyan, Prabhupada speaks about bhakti. So there is that little bit of a tension that sometimes the verses, they seem to be saying something, Prabhupada translates. Everywhere there is yoga, Srila Prabhupada will translate it to bhakti. Some places even he takes karma and translates it to bhakti. And the reason, of course, is that he's following Krishna's intent. That Krishna's intent is to draw our attention to bhakti. So, like I said, the devotees are more merciful than the Lord, but that does create a little bit of creative tension. In this section, it's like coming home. Right? The practitioners of bhakti, Krishna is speaking about bhakti, Prabhupada is writing about bhakti, everything aligns, right? And so that's why the section 2, it flows very, very smoothly, because it aligns to the propensity of the devotees who have taken to Krishna consciousness. It aligns to the nature of the devotees who are Prabhupada Nugas, following Srila Prabhupada, following Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, because of their own purvaras, because of their own development in the spiritual cycle. They have developed a natural attraction to bhakti, and this resonates it. So most enjoyable aspect of Bhagavad Gita as a whole is enjoyable, but this specifically, it's a lot more enjoyable. So 6 chapters, and this mostly small chapters. 9, only 10 and 11 are bigger chapters. The 11th chapter is the 3rd longest in the Bhagavad Gita, but potent, very, very potent chapters, especially chapter 7 and chapter 9. If you look at verses that are quoted, a lot of those verses belong to these 2 chapters, chapter 7 and 9. Of course, the Chatursloki comes in chapter 10, and the Yoga Ladder comes in the 12th chapter, right? So a lot of really confidential reassurance and tattva packed in this section. So what is the connection that in Krishna, in chapter 6, Krishna spoke about Paramatma. He introduced the notion of Paramatma attained through the process of Astanga yoga. And then he concluded the chapter by saying that Yogi Nam api sarvesham madgatena. Of all the yogis, the most perfect is the one who meditate on Krishna, the basis of Paramatma. Right. So he talks about Astanga Yoga, goes through all the things, challenges and all that. And then he says of all the yogis, right? And that's an important point because a yogi can meditate on whatever their propensity is, right? They can meditate on Paramatma, they can meditate on Brahman, they can even meditate on material nature. Like if they're just looking for material for siddhis, they meditate on various aspects of nature to get lagima, garima, the various siddhis, being smaller than the smallest, larger than the largest, just material aspects. So that's why Krishna says of all these kinds of yogis, the best is the one who meditates on me, right? So having established this, Krishna will now speak in the 7th chapter about himself, right? And this is one of the few cases in the Gita where Krishna changes subject without waiting for a prompt from Arjuna, right? Because generally Krishna waits for Arjuna to ask something. Like 3rd chapter, he asks, what do you want me to do? And Krishna speaks about karma. 5th chapter, Arjuna again asks, and then Krishna speaks about Gyan-based karma. 4th chapter, Arjuna asks, how did you preach to the Sun Lord? And then Krishna explains his position. But here, because this process of bhakti is so dear to Krishna, he is so anxious to talk about it. He derives so much happiness in talking about it that he just goes right into it without even waiting for Arjuna to ask. Now, the first verse is a very interesting verse because it, and that's the point I was just making, that how the verses can mean different things based on how they are constructed. Right? So this is the Maya Sakta Mana Partha Yoga Yonjan Madashraya Asamshayam Samagram Mam Yatha Gyasasi Tachru. That, O son of Pratha, how by practicing yoga in full consciousness of me, with mind attached to me, you can know me in full, free from doubt. Right? So this process of deriving different constructs from a verse is known as Anvaya. Right? And there's a difference between, so this is not really speculation. Right? So it's not that some person thinks and says, maybe I can draw this word. It's what acharyas do, and because they're empowered, they can do that. They look at the verse, they look at at what the message Krishna is trying to give, and then they try to extract different meanings. Like if you remember, or if you have done the Srimad Bhagavatam or Chaitanya Charitamrita, where Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya and Mahaprabhu were talking, and then on one verse in the Bhagavatam 176, I believe, this is the Atmaram verse, and Mahaprabhu essentially sat and gave 64 different meanings for that verse, just based on Anuvaya. And so we can, based on this, we can understand what is it that Krishna is trying to tell us. So if we just look at the various aspects of the verse that Krishna talks to us about, so mind attached to Krishna, Maya Sakta Manapartha, hear about Krishna, Tat Shunu, right? Know Krishna. Then free from doubts is a samshayam, samagram ma, take shelter, madashraya, right? And practice yoga yuncha, right? So one can read this verse as beginning from mind attached to Krishna. In that case, this verse is essentially a continuation of the 6th chapter, because what was the culmination of the Astanga Yogi's practice? That he is able to control his mind in samadhi and repose it to Krishna. Right? So what is the next step that he does? Hear about Krishna, know about Krishna, etc. Right? So this is the flow of Bhakti Yoga as a process of maturing Astanga Yoga. So the important point to understand is that it's not that Astanga Yoga takes one to perfection in itself. In order for it to take to perfection, it actually flows into Bhakti Yoga. But then when something is in a circle, there is no start and end point, right? There is only entry points. So one entry point is Maya Saktamana Partha. Another entry point is Tatshunu. Tatshunu is hear about me. This is what devotees do. This is their entry point. Then by hearing about Krishna, then Yata Gyasasi. Then they essentially know more about Krishna. And then Asamshaya. They become free from doubts. Then Ashraya. They take Ashraya of Krishna. And then Yoga Yunja. And with this, they practice even more bhakti. And then that process, Maya Saktamana Partha, that then attracts them to Krishna. So we see how this verse, it is transitioning smoothly from Astanga Yoga to Bhakti Yoga, but at the same time, it is also saying that I am not dependent on Astanga Yoga. Right? If you remove the Astanga Yoga, then simply by hearing about Krishna, one can also make progress. So broadly, the chapter is divided into two parts, knowing Krishna and not knowing Krishna. Essentially, they're both the same. They're both talking about knowing Krishna, but one talks about it in verse. So just in terms of the progress, as we had mentioned, that from Karma Kand, which results in Sakam Karma, Nishkam Karma gives knowledge of the soul, Astanga Yoga gives Paramatma Gyan, and it can progress into knowing Krishna, which is technically known as Sambandha Gyan, right? So this is one path of progress, of gradual development, and then there is the direct path that one simply takes to the process of bhakti by hearing Krishna. And all these things, so it's not that the person is deprived of the results of Sakam Karma, Nishkam Karma, Astanga Yoga. All these things are automatically available, right? So the person develops an ability to control the urges, faith in the Vedas, control the senses, faith in the soul, then faith in Paramatma. All that flows automatically as a result of developing faith in Krishna. So one of the question is, why does Krishna speak about himself, right? And the reason this is there because people, not devotees, but the people will say that Lord of Bhagavad Gita is Krishna glorifying himself. In the 10th chapter, he says, I'm this, I'm that. In the 11th chapter, he says all of this. 12th chapter, basically in the middle 6 chapters, right? And one of the question is that why does Krishna speak so much about himself? Now, the point to note is that in the first 6 chapters, Krishna has spoken 279 verses, and only 10% of them are about him, right? And just for interest, let's see the times when Krishna has spoken about himself. In 261, Krishna says that one who restrains his senses, keeping them under full control and fixes his consciousness about me, is a man of steady intelligence, right? So here Krishna is talking about one who fixes his consciousness upon him, right? So this is the verse that comes after Krishna speaks about the Sthita-prajna. It answers the question of Sthita-prajna. So Krishna is telling Arjun how to control senses, right? And in that he also speaks about how he is the object of those who have controlled their senses, right? And this is essentially the followers of the Vedas. Then in the 3rd chapter, verse 30, where Krishna says, surrender all your work unto me. Here Krishna is teaching Arjun Karma Yoga by example. Like he holds himself as an example that how I do my prescribed duties and the whole world will come to ruination if I don't do my duty. And then he also declares himself as the object of those who are practicing karma yoga. Right? Just like in the previous, he presents himself as the object of those who are controlling their senses by following the Vedic scriptures. Now he is presenting himself as the object of those who are practicing karma yoga. Then in the 4th chapter, we know in the first 15 verses, Krishna speaks about himself as why he is the bona fide teacher of divine knowledge, right? Why Krishna is, because he's God, right? And then 434 is the famous Tadvidi Pratipatena, the position of a guru. And then in the next verse, Krishna talks about what does such a qualified guru teach, right? He says that by this knowledge, you will see that all living beings are but part of the Supreme, or they are part of mind, right? So what is Krishna talking about here? That one who sees the soul understands that the quality of the soul is the same as me, right? And then in the 5th chapter, Krishna talks about that he is the ultimate beneficiary of sacrifices, austerity, the lord of planets and demigods. And Krishna says that because he has presented so far karma and Gyan Yoga to Arjuna, but he is generalizing over here to say that he's the ultimate purpose of all the yogas. Just so that Arjuna may not think that different yogas lead to different paths. Same thing in chapter 6, Krishna speaks about himself, and then he concludes by saying in 647 that the enlightened position of the yogi is in Krishna. So it's not that Krishna has not spoken about himself, but only when context demands it, right? But that is going to change now, right? So in the process of karma, gyan, and astang, what Krishna has spoken so far is that when the process matures, it leads one to Krishna. However, in bhakti, the process begins with Krishna. The very first verse in the section of bhakti begins with Krishna, right? And the reason is that bhakti is different from karma, jnana, and astang, because bhakti is based on the emotion of love. So when somebody comes to you and says that I am in love, then the immediate question is, who are you in love with, right? Because without an object, the emotion does not make sense. So similarly, because bhakti is an emotion of love, it has to be reposed into an object. So this is why in this middle section, Krishna will define the object of love, which is himself. And really speaking, Krishna speaks about the process of bhakti, right? But he speaks about himself to inspire confidence. So the example is that a doctor, he may be trying to assure a patient, saying that by this process, I have cured many others. Now, one might say the doctor is boasting, but actually, he's also inspiring confidence in the patient. And the patient knows that this process has worked on many other persons, so there's a good chance that it will work on him. And that is exactly what Krishna is doing. That he is speaking about how potent bhakti has been in order to inspire us to take to the process of bhakti. He's talking about himself because when we take to the process of bhakti, we need to repose our love. Right? That's why the first stage of bhakti is Sambandha Gyan. Sambandha Gyan is who am I, who is Krishna, what is the relationship between the two. So Krishna teaches bhakti as a way to bhakti yoga as a way to express bhakti, as a way to experience bhakti, and as a way to deepen bhakti. And one of the important things that comes not just in Bhagavad Gita, but in Srimad Bhagavatam and Chaitanya Charitamrita, that the process is glorified more than the destination. Like Krishna is Supreme Personality of Godhead, yes, but the most of the glory is attributed to the process. Now, somewhere they're indistinguishable because the process leads to the conclusion, but the process is more glorious because it is more accessible, or it gives us access to that which is otherwise adhoksajay, otherwise beyond our senses. So now we come to the essence of the chapter. So Krishna talks about how to know about him, right? And essentially he says, here with faith and practice, right? Three simple things. And that's the reason I said this chapter is like, we don't have to speak too much about it, because we are practicing this for depending on when we started our journey, for many years. But these are the three things that Krishna stresses on. Hearing, Tatshunu, that is our entry into that spiral of advancement. Why with faith? Right? Because only then we will act upon it. Right? So we have situations where people come and give advice, but we don't have faith on the person. So we may be courteous and hear the advice, but that's about it. But when we hear with faith, then we are inspired to practice. So Krishna introduces himself in the chapter, and basically, simply he says that I am everything. Right. So he says that as part of everything is I am the material world. And Bhumi Apa Nalovayu. So earth, water, fire, air, ether. So everything that is there in the material world is Krishna. Everything in the subtle world, mind, intelligence, and false ego, is Krishna. Everything that is spiritual is Krishna. So essentially what it means is there is nothing outside Krishna. Right? And then he says that all the aspects of these entities, I am there. I create, I maintain, and I destroy. Of course, for the spirit, there is no destruction. But for the material world, the material world comes into creation, goes away, Krishna destroys it. Same thing with the subtle body, and Krishna is the creator and maintainer of the spirit. So anything that happens to everything is done by Krishna. Simple definition of the position of the Supreme Lord. So now that Krishna has said that he does everything to everything, how can you perceive Krishna, right? And he gives a sampling over here. Like he says, I'm the taste of water, I'm the light of the sun and moon, the fragrance of earth, the sound in ether, the heat and light of fire, the ability in man, the penance of the ascetics, the syllable Om, and ultimately the root cause of everything. And the reason Krishna does this is because he has just introduced himself to us. So he is introducing himself to us who are conditioned souls that are firmly entrenched in the material aspect. So he presents himself through that which we are familiar with. So we are familiar with drinking water, we see the sun and the moon. The fragrance of earth is that which happens when there's dry earth and the rain falls for the first time, this aroma that comes. So we have all experienced one or more of them. This is by no means exhaustive or limiting, right? So this is not the only places where one can perceive Krishna, right? And Krishna is not limited to these places, but he's giving us a way. He's giving us a way to, if you're starting a journey on bhakti, to perceive him, right? It is also a way for one to so if one is a gross materialist, then the their endeavors are more in understanding these things. Like if you look at the scientists, they're looking at things like how does the sun work, how does the moon work, how does aroma come, how does sound travel, heat and light. They're looking at it as principles of science there. And this is Krishna's way of telling us. Now, it does not mean that he's negating that. Yes, all that is true. But Krishna is basically asking us to look beyond that. Like it's like Sir Isaac Newton made this statement. I'm paraphrasing, that he thanked the Lord because he allowed him to follow what he spoke. Right. So essentially, what he said was, whatever that he formulated, the laws of gravitation and motion and all that, were initially spoken by the Lord, and then he followed through with them. Right. So essentially, he from himself he said, "I'm just an observer that's able to formulate." Right? And it's not that he created the laws; the laws were created by the Lord, but he was in humility. He was saying that he was thanking the Lord that he allowed him to see them and formulate them. So Krishna is also reaching out to those who are digging deeper and deeper into the material aspect to see that when there are so many laws, there has to be a person giving laws, right? Because by nature things are chaotic. They don't submit themselves to law. If you take a bunch of blocks and throw them in the air, they will not fall down and make a house. They will fall down randomly. But if there is order, if there is repetitiveness, if there is formulation of principles, and Krishna says that if there is so much of that going on, look for my hand beyond that. Right? So we can see how Krishna is transitioning one from the material to the spiritual concept, right? And the famous verse that he says is, this is 7.7, Matata Paratramna Anyat Kinchadasti Dhananjaya. And so he says that like pearls in a necklace, and he says, I'm the thread. So one may look at the necklace and be enamored by the pearl, but essentially there is a thread that is invisible, that is holding all these pearls together. Right? So just because you cannot see that thread does not mean that the thread is not there. And when you see that the pearl necklace is nicely organized, you can deduce that there is a thread underneath that is holding it, right? So Krishna is introducing himself that way. So, okay, so we spoke about why does Krishna speak about himself. Then Krishna speaks, the second section, Krishna speaks about two categories of people who reject him and people who accept him, right? Namam dushkritana mura prapadyante naradama. So here he talks about four kinds of people who reject him. So these are the materialists. So the materialists reject him because they're not interested in him, right? It's not that they have any envy towards Krishna, but they just don't care about it, right? Let's assume you have a neighbor, you have nothing to do with the neighbor, right? You don't talk to him, you don't not talk to him, right? You're just worried with your in your own life. So, and essentially the neighbor doesn't exist for you. Right? That's the materialists. Then there are the mental speculators, Maya Partharyana, right? So they are the ones who are the philosophers, the pseudo-philosophers, Prabhupada calls them, the intellects, and they essentially try to present. They try to present some kind of an intelligence that is outside, that does not accept the presence of God, right? And then the atheists. The atheists are the ones that are envious of Krishna, right? They're the ones who basically want to deny the existence of Krishna. And then there are those who are averse. So these are the impersonalists. So while the atheists will deny the existence of God, the impersonalists want to kill God. And so basically they say the God has no form, he has no body. So when you go to somebody and say that you have no form, you're essentially killing the form of the person, right? So these are the four kinds of people that reject Krishna. And then there are four kinds of people that turn to Krishna. Chaturvida bhajante ma. So they are the ones who are artharthi. They are desiring wealth. So they go to Krishna with material desires, give me money, right? Now you'll see that, I'll talk about that later. And then the second is Artharthi. The first is Artho. Artharthi are those who are distressed. They're looking for help. The third is Jigyasu, curious. And the fourth is Jnani, right? So these are the four kinds that turn to Krishna. But you'll see that the four that do not turn to Krishna, the underlying reasons are very similar. Like, so the materialists desire wealth and the Artho desire wealth. Okay, somebody is, mic is on. Rup Raghunath Prabhu, if you can find out who it is and mute them, I'd appreciate it. Thank you. So the materialists are desiring wealth, but they're desiring it away from Krishna. Like the Artho, they're desiring wealth, they're looking at it from Krishna, like our Dhruv Maharaj. Right? Then there are those who are curious. Right? So they're intelligent people, like the mental speculators. But the speculation turned them away from Krishna, and the curious, they turned towards Krishna. Right? So in a way, we can see that there is not a one-to-one, but there's a broad correspondence between the four who turn and four who do not turn to Krishna. So Krishna says that for the one who turn away from him, he establishes this curtain of Maya. It's a one-way curtain. Krishna can see them, but they are unable to see Krishna. So the point that I made is that the difference between those who reject and accept Krishna is where do they turn for sustenance. So it's not that the devotees, and here we're talking about Mishra Bhaktas, right? So this verse talks about mixed devotees. It's not that they are devoid of material desires, like devotees like us, right? We still have material desires. We will be working to control them, but we are not devoid of them. But what makes us pleasing to Krishna is that even for those material desires, we turn to Krishna. Akama sarva kamo bhi moksha kama udati. Like whether without akam or sakam, or full of desires, or moksha kama, or desiring liberation. Tivrena bhakti yoga. Right? But one practices bhakti yoga, then one will quickly make advancement. Then Krishna talks about, so he talks about four people who have not accepted Krishna. He talks about two more people. One is the people who worship the demigods. Right? So these are people who worship the demigods as supreme. It's not that Krishna rejects demigod worship, but he rejects giving the position of being the supreme lord to the devas. And then there are those who are looking to merge into the Brahma. Right? So these are either the Brahmavadis or those who have that, or those who have that conception. So they're desiring liberation. So the demigod worshippers, Krishna calls them less intelligent because they lack tattva gyan, right? So they don't know the tattva, sambandha gyan specifically, they lack. And those who are trying to merge into the Brahman, he says they have no intelligence because they are completely off. They have completely missed the instructions of the Vedas. So summarizing, Krishna spoke in the preceding 6 chapters, has spoken about Jiva in the context of Karma Gyan. Now he speaks about himself. And this knowledge is needed for the practice of bhakti as the ashraya for bhakti. He first speaks about himself in the context of the manifest world, right? How is the taste of water and the heat of the sun and the light, etc. Right? He also speaks about those who accept him and reject him. And the reason he speaks is that even though he speaks about them as 8 different people, 4 people who accept him and 4 people who reject him, actually speaking, these 8 tendencies are within all of us. Right? And that's why he speaks about them. It's not that there's a person who's exclusively Artho or Artharthi, or who's exclusively Maya Parthagyana. They may be people who have demonstrated that predominantly, but for people like us, we have a mixture of these 8. So Krishna speaks about them so that we can see within ourselves, right? And how we can turn the 4 tendencies that take us away from Krishna and convert them into the 4 tendencies that take us towards Krishna by the practice of bhakti, right? And then finally, perfection of yoga is to be connected to Krishna, right? So this gets us to the end of the 7th chapter, and we have a few minutes. I can pause over here and give you back your few minutes, or if somebody has a couple of questions, we can talk about it. Okay, if not, then okay. Sorry, I spoke too soon. Akhila Mataji, please go ahead.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, Pancham Pranams. Prabhu, where you are associating with the non-devotees and the devotees, where we are saying materialist and help who requires help, is that the artho? Mental speculators towards, and then we're matching it against curious person. And is it like the
Well, it would probably help if I have a small write-up on this. I'll send that to. I'll put that. I give it to Rup Raghunath Prabhu. We can put that on the WhatsApp group. That be okay?
Sure, Prabhu.
Thank you.
Yeah. And also where the next part where the who are who believe that devas are supreme, there's like less intelligent, and the Brahman has no intelligence, and is the other one is that who's wanting liberation? Is that the third one?
No, that is actually
Right.
the second one. The ones who were looking to merge into the Brahman, they're aspiring for Sayuja Mukti, impersonal liberation. Yeah.
Got that, Prabhu.
Krishna
Okay,
calls them no intelligence, even though like you would think they're more advanced because the demigod worshippers are essentially looking for material gains, right? One worships like Lord Shiva for a good wife or for wealth, Lord Ganesh. So they're looking for material gains. The impersonalists are looking for, they have a spiritual goal, right? They're looking for liberation. But Krishna calls them as having no intelligence, because it's kind of like if you were in, let's assume, the 6th grade and you made a mistake in your mathematics sum, the teacher would say you can do better, right? If you were in a PhD program and then you made a mistake, then the consequences would be teacher would chastise you a lot more. So people who are aspiring for impersonal Brahman liberation, they're fairly spiritually evolved. Right? They've already gone through the process of Nishkam. They have developed control on the desire and senses. Now, having reached that stage, what are they doing now? Now they're looking for impersonal liberation. So that's why Krishna is heavier on them, saying they are actually muras. They have absolutely no intelligence.
the fundamental basis itself is they
Missing.
haven't understood it. It's missing.
Yeah.
Got that, Prabhu. And sorry, I was just thinking. Sorry, someone else raising the hand. Sorry.
Okay, we have Nanda Tanuja Prabhu. Please go ahead.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. What I'm going to say is pure speculation from my side, so please forgive me in advance. So Krishna, so materialists say that when we take something and start breaking it down, to its atomic level, and then electrons, and then neutrons, protons, and just keep going down, it comes down to vibrating strings. So, and Krishna says in 7.7, Sutre Manigadaiva, basically saying that It's just strings. It's like a thread going through pearls. So I'm finding there's some correlation. Would you care to comment on that, Prabhu?
I would say that I've never heard it before, but if you see this correlation, you should definitely develop it. Find something more. I guess you're talking about the string theory, right?
String theory, right?
Which more or
Correct.
less, my understanding is has been disproven. But it was at one point it was a theory that had some validity to it. But these things, I know you have to be a physicist to know it. Come and go. I don't think that Krishna is expecting the Bhagavad Gita readers to be theoretical physicists, but nevertheless, devotees have a way of churning more meanings from what Krishna is. You should definitely pursue it.
Yeah, it's kind of re-emerging now, the string theory. That's fine. Okay, Prabhu. Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so the last question for the day, Vivek Prabhu.
Yeah, Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. My question is from the 7th chapter content about Brahmavadi. You said they reject Krishna when they are looking to merge into the light or effulgence. So I've read in Prabhupada's book that that's a stepping stone even for a devotee, that one goes into Brahmavadi and then eventually one can get elevated to a devotee stage. But I didn't correlate the point when you said they reject Krishna. Can you clarify on that?
So good question. Prabhupada, he says that when a person is attracted, so let's take a step back. There are two kinds of people. There are Brahmavadis and Mayavadis, right? So Brahmavadis don't reject Krishna. They're only attracted to the impersonal aspect of Krishna. Right. So, which is why they get something. They get Sayujamukti. They get a spiritual destination, right? Those are the ones that Krishna is criticizing over here.
Correct.
Right. So those who, so it's kind of like you have a CEO of the company and the whole company is running under the orders of the CEO. You know there is a CEO, right? But you're simply infatuated by today I got this law established by the CEO, today I understood this by the CEO, but you never bother to go beyond that, even though you're aware that there's a CEO in the company. Mayavadi is a little different. Mayavadi are the ones who refuse to accept that there is a God with a personal form. And so they say even if God takes a personal form, it is the Brahman taking a temporary form, right? So it's a slightly different one. So Prabhupada says that when Brahmavadis, and the example for that is Sukdev Goswami, he was an impersonalist, he was a Brahmavadi, but then he got the mercy of a devotee, which essentially is in Sukdev Goswami cases, it was his father, Srila Vyasadeva, right? He heard the verses of the Bhagavatam recited by the disciples of Vyasadeva, and then he became a devotee there, right? So the Brahmavadis, when they get the mercy of a devotee, they make progress and they can become attached to the personal form of Krishna.
Yes, thank you, Prabhuji. So on the presentation, the averse people, can they be classified as Mayavadi, or Mayavadis are different?
They are classified as Mayavadi.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
I didn't put too much in the presentation because time is limited, but I speak about it in the lecture. In the recorded lecture, there I speak in some details about it.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Okay, so the very, very last question, Ashutosh Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, you already answered Dandavat Pranams. So you already answered the Mayavadi versus Brahmavadi. That's really enlightening to know, because usually you put that in the perspective that whosoever meditates on the formless God is a Mayavadi. So it's really nice to understand the different classifications. It goes on and on. For example, Brahmavadi, now we learned about that, versus Mayavadi versus Shunyavadi. So these are all, I believe, in the historical timeline, these are all the different concepts that were introduced by different personalities. What I was getting confused at is the Brahman Brahman aspect of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, does it cover Shunyata? Does it also cover Mayavad? Do you think so? Like, what is the superset? Because Brahman, I believe, I mean, when we look at Dhruva Maharaj, we understand that he felt the Paramatma aspect of Krishna. But how to know what is a good example of Brahman realization? So 2 questions.
Okay. I have actually no idea what you're asking, Prabhu. So maybe you can summarize question 1 and then question 2.
Question 1 is realizing, first of all, is Brahman the superset of Mayavad or Shunyavad or such other concepts where the what they call consciousness or energy is actually formless, without saying.
Maybe I can address that. So essentially what's happening is you're conflating 2 different things. Right. So when you talk about Mayavad, Brahmavad, they are perspectives. And Brahman is an aspect of Krishna. Right. So it's kind of like saying that, I can see a thing from 90 degrees, 45 degrees, and then you say is 90 degrees a characteristic of the thing that I'm seeing, which is not. Right? It's a matter of perspective. Right? So Brahman is the impersonal energy of Krishna. It's Krishna's influence that is felt everywhere. There are people who are attracted to Brahman. They're the Brahmavadis. There are people who are mistaken about the personal form of Krishna. They're Mayavadis. And there are people who, Shunyavadis are non-Vedic, right? They're atheists. So they don't have any correlation with the Vedas. So there are people who basically reject everything. And, they're Shunyavadis. So that's the darshan. That's the perspective that they take.
Right. So Prabhuji, a good example of someone who realized the Brahman aspect of Krishna, maybe that's how we can learn as devotees that what is it in the scriptures if we have.
That will be a little difficult because we study all Vaishnava scriptures, and Vaishnava scripture talks almost entirely about devotees. The only one example that comes to my mind is in the first canto, 13th chapter of Dhritarashtra. So Dhritarashtra, after he is taken by Vidur, he goes to the forest and there he performs Astanga Yoga. And at the end of the Astanga Yoga, he merges into the impersonal form, right? And the devotees say that even though Dhritarashtra had so much of association with Krishna, but because he was so intrinsically envious of Krishna, despite the association of Vidur, who was a pure devotee, who was instructing him, he just still could not take to the form of Krishna, right? So he essentially acquired Brahman realization. In the 3rd canto, in the instructions of Lord Kapila, there's a conversation between Maitreya and Vidur. And I'm sorry, this is not the instructions of Kapil, but there's the conversation between Maitreya and Vidur, in which it's mentioned that how the opposing soldiers in the battle of Kurukshetra acquired Brahman liberation by the fact that they died in the presence of Krishna. Right. So it mentions it at a high level, but for obvious reasons, you will not see Vaishnava scriptures delving too deep into Brahmavad. My recommendation to you is also not to delve too deep into it. Focus on bhakti.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Thank you. Okay. So next week will be our break, and hopefully you'll use that to prepare for your exam. We'll meet the week after next and continue with the 8th chapter. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya eva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Anant Koti Vaishnavind ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Sai Gaur Premanand. Hare Krishna. Thank you
Hare
so
Bol,
much.
Prabhu.
Hare
Thank you so
Krishna.
much. Hare Krishna. Dandavat pranam.
Thank you.
Pranam.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.